Hello everybody, welcome back to another episode of that show that will not be named. I'm your host, Brian Otik, Game Prince, whatever you prefer. And today, I want to talk about writing, or more specifically, things that I'm getting tired of in fantasy. Now, the other day, the main reason I wanted to talk about this was because the other day, I sat down to write. I had a whole day I wasn't doing dick. And as per usual, the entire day, I couldn't get anything done because I couldn't think of anything to write. I was legitimately panicking. I thought I lost the spark of inspiration. And I just didn't do anything all day. I sat in my bed and I fucking slammed my head against the keyboard. And I was just beside myself. And it got me to thinking, because basically I was trying to write something fantasy-esque. But the problem was that I feel like I was being too self-critical. Because a lot of fantasy that I see nowadays is, now mind you, I didn't realize this until watching some dude's video on it. Subversion in fantasy. It is fucking everywhere. And I kind of realized after along the way, whenever I write a fantasy story, I take a character, I write very pulp-like. I take a character and I give him a name, give him a badass sword, give him an ability or some shit like that. I don't know. I just make something special about him and I send him on a journey. It's basically a one character, one and done. That's most of my fantasy stories. Every once in a while, I'll write like 10 stories for a guy and I'll put them all in like a sequence. I have done this with about 10-ish characters. None of them exist usually in the same world. They're all just kind of one-off stories because mainly I'm a short story writer. Never been a fan of novels. Novellas I'll do once in a blue moon if I really care about the subject. But other than that, it's short stories. I'm all about the short stories. But I was watching this video the other day about this guy who was reviewing Terry Goodwin, who wrote this book that has like sex stuff in it, and it pissed a whole bunch of people off. And he said something, and that thing was that he's tired of subversion in fantasy. And that's when it kind of hit me like, fuck, you know what? Me too. When is the last time you were just able to read a fucking, a Dragonlance? Or the last time you were just able to read, Conan or someone like Conan busting into a room and fucking feeding a sorcerer their fucking nuts on a silver platter? When's the last time you just saw a dude beat the shit out of a fucking Hydra in the middle of a burning forest? Just cool ass stories, like, some dude, I don't know, gets stabbed with a knife in the chest, and that knife will stay there, won't kill him immediately, but it'll, like, the sorcerer that stabbed him in the chest with it, it's like, haha, if you disobey me, I could snap my fingers, and it'll drive further and kill you. As long as you listen to me, it'll just stay in your chest, but it's like the hilt shouldn't be big enough, so it pops out. See, I already got another idea right there. Fuck. Yeah, and then he goes on a quest for him and tries to figure out how to remove the dagger. Could call it, I don't know, Sword of Hearts or something. Anyways, I'm getting off topic. The point is, when's the last time you just heard a story like that and it wasn't about some fucking dumbasses falling in love, a group of ragtag, cool, sassy characters? That's one of my biggest issues is I read a lot of modern fantasy. I fucking can't stand. I don't like Brandon Sanderson's stuff. I also really fucking hate all these fantasy stories with a thickness, a page count as big as my fucking bicep. It's so aggravating. I feel like there's no casuality, I don't know the word for that, but there's no casualness anymore towards fantasy. It's all got to be these grandiose, giant, thick-ass trilogies. They all got to have the same fucking names. The Sword of the Coast, the Queen of the Daggers, the fucking King of Songs. It's all called the same shit. Now, obviously, because there's always a point, I'm going to get to that point in a minute. The point to this, it basically calls back to, I guess, my desire to see more fantasy literature like that done in the 70s, I guess. And when I say that, I mean mainly like the work of like Michael Moorcock. Pardon me if I'm a little distracted. This fucker looks like they almost were gonna hit the car. I don't trust Jersey drivers. Fucking maniacs. Anyways, read some of Michael Moorcock shit. You'll basically get what I'm talking about. Read, what's it called? John Carter. Read, Conan the Barbarian, Solomon Kane type stories. The pulps. Not just the pulps, but any fucking fantasy written around that. I really enjoy, personally. I really enjoy that dreamy, psychedelic type fantasy stories and storytelling from way back when. And I feel like that is completely dried up nowadays to a point where everything is fucking mimicking. If it's not mimicking Game of Thrones, then it's just a rehash of something Brandon Sanderson put out. And it's always like, if the magic system isn't dissolving, or the story or the premise of the world isn't dissolving to something sex related, then it's absolutely forcing itself to be a subversion of fantasy, where it's like, oh, we're going to have Conan the Barbarian, but it's going to be a woman. Whoa, that's never been done before. Like, there's this book. Big reveal. Ready for this? I work in a Dollar Tree. Well, as of recently, I work in a Dollar Tree. And one of the things that I actually really like about working in the Dollar Tree, two things. We get weird-ass fucking movies in there. And we get books in there. And you bet your ass, my first day on the job, I flocked over to that book section. I was like, what do we got? I found one fantasy book. And it was about this girl who is supposed to... She wasn't supposed to be the ruler or something, and that she can't find a prince or some shit. So then she ends up taking over, killing the king, or being involved in the death of the king and the queen or something like that, and she ends up taking over. And it's like, a woman ruling? What? That's crazy. Who would ever think of something like that? And I'm like, well, okay, that's about the 80th book that I've seen with that premise. And they all treat it like it's something so, it's never been done before. Newsflash, it has. It's getting old. Or, when you have a book and they're like, ooh, it's the bad guy. Turns out the bad guy wasn't that bad after all. Okay, all right. We get it. Some people who are perceived as bad aren't necessarily bad. It's cool. I can accept that. The problem is when you make every single fucking bad guy just a misunderstood dude. I can't get behind it anymore. Then why the fuck is there anyone evil in any of your story? Why does the concept of evil even exist in your world at that point? Why don't you just make everyone sit down and have long, talks? You just have everyone sit down and talk out the problems. They'll figure everything out. They'll work together to figure out a way to get everything working. Why the fuck even mention anything at that point? Sometimes Evil exists to be evil. And I'm hoping, especially in fantasy literature, that we're going to see a return to that. That we're going to see a return to, the bad guy isn't just doing this because his mommy's sick and, he needs to shoot people on the side because then he'll get the magic medicine to buy the shit that'll make her better. Sometimes people are just dicks. Sometimes people are just assholes. And I've been sitting around waiting, thinking, like, when are we gonna go back to that? When are we gonna go back to that classic villain, where villains are gonna stop being these pansy cunts? I don't know. It's not just that too. It's a whole fucking. I could go into it, but I'm tired enough thinking about it every day that it just irks me. And I don't know. I'm just really tired of modern fantasy. Modern fantasy's gotten on my fucking nerves. So sick of it. So I say I think we need a total return to that 1960s, 1970s psychedelic, very dreamy, like ethereal type fantasy, which is obviously mainly what I write, because I prefer to just be in that area. My brain is caught like back in the fucking 60s and 70s fantasy wise. I can't really get past even the 80s. I can't get past the 80s on that. That's probably, in my opinion, our peak in fantasy. Because the modern stuff is just parodies. It's all fucking parodies. And you can only parody something for so long before it just gets tired and annoying. So yeah, those are my thoughts on that.